Hello, hello. How are we all? No, I'm pretty sure you don't, person whose name I can't read. All right. Suppose this is obligatory. There it is. That's the mugshot. It looks more fake than the deep-faked ones we've been seeing. His eyes look really red. Yeah. How does it feel being indicted? Feels like a relief, honestly. Been running for too long. Okay. What are we doing? Here we go. We have Peterson reacting to the court decision. Let's just refresh on what that is. Turns out in Canada they don't really like it when their psychology professionals start publicly shaming trans people on social media. Court released decision Wednesday. Peterson says he will take the training and broadcast it. He will take the training and broadcast it. That's certainly changed his tune from "I will not do it," or however he pronounced it. Last November, Peterson, a professor emeritus at the University of Toronto Psychology Department, which should be more of a scandal than it is, who is also an author and media commentator, was ordered by the College of Psychologists of Ontario to undergo a coaching program on professionalism in public statements. That followed numerous complaints to the governing body of Ontario psychologists, of which Peterson is a member, regarding his online commentary directed at politicians, a plus-size model, and transgender actor Elliot Page, among other issues. You can read more about those social media posts here, so I guess this might be worth just going over quickly so we have a refresher on what this is all about. Let's see here. This one was a weird one. Sorry, not beautiful, and no amount of authoritarian tolerance is going to change that. She's actually very good looking. Like that's weird. This is also, psychologically speaking, that's not a statement you can make. What did I just do? That's not a statement you can make definitively. Actually, am I still blocked? Yeah, I'm still blocked. That's not a statement you can just declare. Attractiveness is always going to be highly subjective. And to simply declare publicly that especially in your capacity as a psychologist or somebody who provides therapeutic services or counseling, like, think about what that tells to all of the people you work with who are probably within this domain of body type. Peterson's comments, the panel also concluded, raised questions about his ability to carry out his responsibilities as a psychologist. Peterson, however, said his tweets on subjects like gender dysphoria are based on his informed knowledge and are, in fact, professional of the highest order. That's funny for a number of reasons. Primarily because his primary reading seems to be in not even Jung, but in readers of Jung. Anywho. This is his reaction
Despite
to it.
my proclivity to feel guilt, which...
What is this? There's no direction to anything. It looks like he has like a MasterCard logo on his buttons. Wait, what is this? It's like it's like it's like the product of a Halloween decoration designer in late stage Alzheimer's.
Despite my proclivity to feel guilt, which is quite substantive, and despite my temperamental unwillingness to engage
He's almost as red as his suit is. Look at his face.
in conflict, not only do I not see what I did wrong, I think what I've done on the public communication front is my responsibility as a clinician to tell the truth about what I see. So we'll make it public.
What the hell was that? Is that his intro now?
Dad, nice to see you.
Hey Mick, how you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. How are you?
Good, actually, all things considered. I'm in Milwaukee, looking forward to the presidential debate tonight. That's fun. You know, I'm
God, you can see on her face she's looking into the abyss. She did not expect her father to look like this.
perplexed, I would say, about the situation in
That's
Canada.
always been his intro. He didn't have like all those weird little like Peterman stills though.
I've been thinking about it this morning. As you know, the court that we appealed the College of Psychologists' decision to decided that the college it's within the college's purview to stop me from having any political opinions, as far as I can tell. The decision, which I posted on Twitter and will post in the description of this video, starts out by making a case for the fundamental reality of freedom of speech for Canadians in Canada, and then says, but, and that's always a bad start when you're talking about freedom of speech.
Why can't they do this in person? If your father looks like this, I don't want you to do this in person either, okay?
But apparently the college has the right to decide that I can be re-educated forcibly with the risk of my license, essentially because I made political statements that the members of the college don't agree with. And those opinions involve two criticisms of Justin Trudeau, one criticism of his chief of staff, one criticism of an Ottawa city councillor, and then my objection on Joe Rogan to the climate apocalyptic fear-mongering that idiot tyrants are foisting on the general population. Now, apparently that makes me unprofessional and a disgrace to the profession, such that I am now going to be required, the college can go ahead with this, to put me into a re-education program with their so-called social media experts, and that's also, by the way, a profession that does not exist, until I learn my lesson, whatever that is, regarding
Social media experts? Well, presumably... Oh my god, why the fuck can't this thing pour? Presumably, this will be run by, people who... Sorry, this is... There we go. Stupid thing. There are programs in communications, and there are courses in things like media literacy and stuff like this. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Why is he so red? Look how orange he is. Like it. Is he well?
regardless of how much time that takes, by their judgment, or they can take my license away. And so the court says, well, of course you have freedom of speech, Dr. Peterson, but because you're a professional, you're bound by your professional organization. And apparently they're not bound, even though they're a government organization, fundamentally. Apparently they're not bound by that fundamental...
And like, look at his hair. It's like steel wool. Like wet steel wool.
Constitutional axiom. And so that shows you, all you Canadians who are listening, and everyone outside of the country who might be the least bit interested in Canada, that shows you exactly what our bloody Constitution is worth. And if Canadians are so daft that they don't think that that's a problem, well, they're going to figure it out over the next 15 years, because there's absolutely no excuse for this. So that's what I'm thinking. Now, there's part of me that's thinking, well, look, Peterson, the College of Psychologists is after you. You've taken it to court. Now the judges have decided that you're wrong. Maybe you're wrong. And I think, well, I expressed political sentiment and I'm actually informed. And so for the life of me, I can't see how I'm...
Okay. Political sentiment, I'm actually informed. No, the chubby woman is not beautiful. This is my professional psychological opinion. What's, is that the only one they have linked? Seriously, guys? God, people are lazy. What is this? Who the hell is this? I don't care about him. God, this website sucks. Anyways.
I'm wrong. I think I have a responsibility to say what I think, and I think many people agree with that, and I think the fundamental consequence of that...
Are the Elliot Page ones still out there? Hang on. They must be. Jordan Peterson, Elliot Page tweets. Can't seem to find them. Hang on. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay. Come on. Where'd it go? Here we go, okay. Sorry, it's Chrome's being stupid. Remember when pride was a sin, and Ellen Page just had her breasts removed by a criminal physician? I can't imagine why anybody had an issue with that, Jordan. These weren't even... It's not even that they were controversial, it's that they're unhinged.
Around the world has been massively beneficial to people. So I think, number one, what the hell? And number two, bring it on and see what happens. Because I will make absolutely every bit of this public in a way that the college and the courts can hardly even imagine.
These are going to be really lame, by the way. This class is going to be really, really fucking lame. It's going to be like, hey, try to avoid, if possible, making targeted comments about people's physical appearances in your capacity as a medical or a psychological or a government official. That's literally what it's going to amount to. There's nothing else.
So away we go. So that's how I'm doing.
That's how you're doing. Okay, but good.
Yeah, but good. You know, I mean, I didn't look. The court decision was worse than I thought it would be. I was already pessimistic. I figured the court would take the coward's way out and basically upbraid the college for procedural inadequacy, because one of the things the college did, which is just beyond comprehension as far as I'm concerned, is pursue these complaints that were put forward by people distributed all over the world, who then claimed in writing falsely to be my clients, when in fact they were never my clients. And not only were they not my clients, they had nothing to do with anyone who was ever a client of mine. And so I figured at least the court would say, well, you know, of course you have the right to police professionals because you're professional governing body, but they didn't even do that. They just basically said, well, of course you have the right to freedom of speech, except when it comes to, let's say, political opinions. So, then what right do you have at all? And, it's terrible, Michaela, because I know perfectly well from talking to many physicians in particular, but also lawyers and psychologists, that no one in Canada, arguably, and this is also extremely strange, it's surreal, there's no one in Canada except me that's actually in a position to fight this, because it's hyper expensive, and I don't know if my insurance will cover it. It's hyper expensive. It's stressful. It's complex. It's time consuming. It could involve the suspension of my license. And there's not really anything that can be.
He actually manages to violate 2 human rights in one go in the Elliot Page tweet, 1 dead-naming a trans person, and 2 denouncing pride, which only exists to counter hate crimes that lead to shame. That one's a little bit more tenuous because it's a play on words, obviously, because he's stupid. Like, it's not Pride Hubris Month for that reason, but I get what you're saying.
Be done to me that's a threat. I'm not serving as a clinician. I don't have a practice anymore because that became impossible, even though I love doing it. And I'm also not very happy about that. So I'm like the person who can do this.
Good.
And Canadians have no idea to what degree professionals in Canada are now required not to say what they think or to lie outright. So, for example, therapists are required by law to lie about, let's say, the gender identity of minors.
What?
And so, for me, especially on the therapy side, if you're required by law and by your
No.
professional organization to lie cowardly, you're done as a therapist, because
You're actually required to basically follow a fairly rigid and simplistic step-by-step procedure that the patient largely supplies the data for. If you're doing your job properly, you shouldn't really have the capacity to lie. We should actually go over the process on stream at some point, because it's actually there's no room for lie. Like, what is he talking about? No, I actually know the child's real gender identity, but I'm keeping it to myself because the government is muzzling. Oh, what is this?
only thing you've got as a therapist is honesty. That's it.
You're not quite getting my point. He doesn't understand the particular niche use of the word pride here. It's an obvious reappropriation. He's idiotically not getting that. No, I think he gets it. I just think there's no way to retort on those lines. I agree with you. He's attacking the term via a label. So he's taking the term pride in like Pride Month or whatever, and he's drawing a connection to the deadly sin from the Bible. But
honesty is what's curative. So, it's just part of how surreal the world is, and particularly how surreal Canada is. It's hard to fathom.
It is hard to fathom. Can I read just a couple of sentences from the decision so people have an idea of what's in here? It's linked below. People can read the entire thing. But there's parts, like this is how it begins. When individuals join a regulated profession, they do not lose their charter right to freedom of expression. At the same time, however, they take on obligations and must abide by...
You can't say dead naming is a human rights issue because you are compelling speech the other way. You can't appeal to rights theory for everything. Well, that's not true. If we're talking about civil rights, or if we're talking about something a little bit more loose, like a general democratic presumption that a condition of people being able to take part freely in society and to be heard as citizens of a country is that their identity as a citizen, as a particular kind of citizen, is acknowledged and respected, and you can absolutely call that a human rights issue. That's not compelling speech the other way. Like, just for the same reason, you can't call someone the N-word in the street. Like, it's constraining speech, certainly, but, like, suck it up. I'm sorry. There's a million ways in which we have to constrain communications in order to live together.
By the rules of their regulatory body, that may limit their freedom of expression. That's just one sentence after another. That's how it starts.
Yeah, perfect. It's a great thing to highlight. It's like,
And also, to be blunt, if you're actually that constrained by being shamed for dead naming someone publicly in that manner, you had nothing important to say anyways. Get a life. That's incredibly petty and stupid.
well, you have this fundamental right, but what? What rules? There's a rule, eh? There's a rule. Is that right?
What is that?
That the College of Psychologists has, that I can't criticize Justin Trudeau on Twitter. That's a rule, is it? And if someone anywhere in the world complains about the fact that I've criticized Justin Trudeau, let's say, that all of a sudden that's a rule.
Did they? Oh my God! Look how fucking angry he is. He's like, he's just a crazy person now. Let's see here. What were the actual tweets? So, online commentary directed at politicians. It depends on what that was. So when I click on this takes me to this. The only thing we have listed is the fat phobic tweet. Here, let me see if I can find them. Which tweets got Peterson in trouble? Okay, here we go. Read the tweets that got Jordan Peterson investigated by College of Psychologists. Enough already. Time to stop. Stop the masks. Stop the lockdowns. Stop the petty power mad hysteria. Leave people alone and let them go on with their lives. Okay, so we have him directly undermining a health ordinance in his capacity as a psychological professional. Enough COVID mandates. Drop the damn masks. Okay, more of that. See, that's one that I could see causing issues. You're also a prick. I mean, it's kind of weak to be insulting someone called Gerald Butts and you land on "you're also a prick" as your insult, but okay, that seems kind of meaningless. Then stop, puppet. Now, what's your end game? I can't even do that. My voice is so gone. So Justin Trudeau says Canadians have the right to protest, to disagree with their government, and to make their voices heard. We'll always protect that right, but let's be clear, they don't have the right to blockade our economy, or our democracy, or our fellow citizens' daily lives. That has to stop. I disagree. Based on the record of human behavior, we are already overpopulating this small world. Any arguments I have heard for supporting such a large human population completely overlook the huge loss of species and ecosystems resulting from our self-absorbed attention. You're free to leave at any point. Since that refers to the world, stop that. Since that refers to the world, that's advocating for him to kill himself. 6 months until the investigation reached its conclusion. 18 pages of background information to sift through. I'm done with it. I'm not defending myself against such accusations anymore. Yeah, this tweet, like, regardless of how seriously you take it, was essentially a call for Roger Palfrey to off himself. Nazis, white supremacists, who simply do not exist in Canada. There's no culture of such things in Canada, political or otherwise. That's brain dead. Okay. Are these all of them? This can't be all of them. Read the tweets that got you. Here are some of the... Okay, so... Oh God, why is there just not like an encyclopedic just collection of them? Like, obviously we would want to see that. Unless we just don't have a list, unless people are just guessing. Well, that's funny. I think I missed this one. Just to be 100% clear, Jordan Peterson just unironically retweeted a video of a BDSM male milking dungeon in the UK claiming to be footage of human rights abuses in China. I'm going to purge that from my brain immediately. Okay, anyways, whatever. Pressing on.
Rule, even though it wasn't a rule. And of course I get to criticize Justin Trudeau, not only because he richly deserves it in every way you can possibly imagine, but because that's actually what freedom of speech means. So I have no idea what the court means by, you know, abiding by the rules. So the rules are whatever the bloody College of Psychology.
You can't use pure rights logic to justify compelling speech. Of course you can. Don't be stupid.
Psychologist determines, constitutes a rule after the fact, given their complete freedom to make manifest any rules they want.
Yeah.
It's beyond comprehension. And yes, but I have freedom of speech. It's like, do I now? What do I get to talk about? Apparently I can't even talk about the weather. You know, here's another fact. This is literally the truth. People can submit a complaint to the College of Psychologists from anywhere in the world. And so someone in the States submitted a complaint about the last conversation I had with Joe Rogan, where I expressed my doubts about the validity of economic predictions based on climate science. The complainant submitted the entire transcript, right? A 3-hour conversation as evidence of my unprofessional behavior. And the college, which did not have to pursue that complaint, went forward with it. So like, okay, I talked to Joe for 3 hours. Apparently, everything I said in that 3 hours was unprofessional and a disgrace to the profession. So, like, well, what am I supposed to do about that? The answer is, well, we're going to appeal the decision. I will take this to the Supreme Court. I don't think that any judges will have either the wisdom or the courage to rule about this properly, except at the Supreme Court level. And I'm not particularly optimistic about that either.
I'm not optimistic about that either. I don't see how you can win this without overturning colleges in general. And I don't, like, that's not a good look for the colleges to lose this. So won't the Supreme Court, I know they're not supposed to be pressured, but won't they, what's the benefit for them for ruling in your favor? Other than withholding freedom of speech?
They support, well, they would support the most fundamental principle of a free society, right? It's like, why do you have the right to freedom of speech? Well, the answer is because there's no difference between free speech and thinking, no difference between free speech and dialogue, and no difference between free speech and problem solving and negotiation. And so, and therefore peace. If you eliminate that, people can no longer think, they can no longer adapt, they can no longer negotiate, they no longer even know how to orient themselves in the world. And so, in principle, the advantage for the Supreme Court.
So just to be clear, Jordan Peterson needs to be able to misgender Elliot Page in public and to tell people on Twitter to kill themselves, or else we will not be able to think. We will lose our sentience as a species. All right, continue, Mr. Tomato.
Court is that they rule in favor of the most fundamental principle upon which civil democracy itself is predicated. Now, I don't think we have the right to free speech in Canada. I think this decision today demonstrates that obviously. I saw the same thing with the Law Society in Canada. Partly was why I'm not surprised at this ruling. I've been through this before, and I see that Canada's walked down that idiot path for at least 30 years. So our country is in, well, this is where I start to get doubtful. It's like either I'm wrong or the country is in trouble. Now, to tell you the truth, I would rather be wrong.
In this man's lifetime, leftist professors were persecuted by government agencies because they were suspected of having communist sympathies. What he is whinging about is not being able to go after the bodies specifically of just random figures on social media, in his capacity specifically as a psychologist. He has his PhD broadcast on his Twitter page. It's pathetic. It's really pathetic.
But I've thought it through. It's like, okay, what did I do exactly? None of my clients complained. That has nothing to do with this. And I expressed my political opinions, which I have a right to do, which I believe were correct. I think that, and Canadians agree with this now. The last poll indicated that Canadians believe that Justin Trudeau is the worst prime minister we've ever had. Well, that was sort of my point a year ago, you know? And so if I can't say that, and yet a majority of Canadians believe it to be true, and believe me, a lot more of them are going to believe that. A lot more are going to believe that in the relatively near future. In what sense do I have anything even approximating freedom of speech? And if
You'll see.
I can't have
You'll all see.
and therefore, in principle, no one can, then what do we do when we're stuck with a prime minister, let's say, who everyone has decided is the worst prime minister the country's ever had? Well,
Move. Run, if you can.
well, this is another reason, you know, why I'm in a position that I can fight this, because the worst thing that could happen is the college can take away my license. Now, I already know that if my license gets taken away, there are other jurisdictions that will grant me a license the next day. And you know, there's a real comedic element to that, because I could lose my license in Ontario and instantly be licensed in at least 3 other jurisdictions.
If you want
And
to call
so
it comedic.
that's not going to look very good with regard to the Ontario College of Psychologists.
Well, at
And
least
so-
they got rid of you.
Well, and fair enough. And if that's what they want, I mean, the other problem that the college is going to face is that, and I don't know exactly what they're going to make of this, but all the people who are involved in this prosecution are going to find very soon that this will eat their life. So, you know,
From a media perspective.
offered-
Yeah.
well, I've offered to the college to negotiate. I actually have a solution in mind. And I've heard the odd comment indicating that maybe that's a possibility. I reached out a month ago with an idea. They haven't got back to me. I think they were waiting for this decision, to tell you the truth. And of course, they're going to be entirely emboldened by this. I know the solution, which I'm not going to discuss in this podcast. You know, I have to talk to them first. I have a reasonable solution. But, and I also know, or think I know, you know, you might ask, well, why is the college doing this? And my suspicions are, because we've been through this before. You know, when Cambridge University canceled the seminar I was going to conduct there on Exodus, I found out eventually that it was basically one person who was behind all of that. There were 2 more that were associated with that person who are pushing the college to go after me for whatever the hell their reasons are. You know, maybe they disagree with my political opinions, particularly on the trans front. And that was the tweet, I think, that really probably initiated all this, right? I tweeted about Elliot Page.
Here we go.
And so I'm perfectly happy that I tweeted that particular tweet. And I also think in 5 years, nobody will admit that they were ever in favor of any of this, right? This is far worse than the lobotomies of the 1930s. This is inexcusable. You know,
What?
I read one poor kid today
What?
on Twitter.
Elliot Page is taking photos of himself, like, happy outside in the sun. He's doing great. Lobotomy patients weren't doing that, Jordan. He's a fucking nutball. We've been offering mastectomies as for gender-affirming care for cis men for basically ever. That's not worse than lobotomies, Jordan.
Transitioner was decrying his castration. Fancy that. And pointing out, for example, that, you know, he's a young guy. He has no sexual drive whatsoever. And he said, well, you know, what am I going to do? What have I lost? I can't believe I was so stupid as to have gone through with this. It's like, you know, fair enough, kid. You probably should have woken up. But the people who facilitated that transformation, your therapists and your surgeons,
What
I
happened
think
to
it's-
do no harm?
yeah, right. I
Yeah.
should also point out, just so
We're not going to do no harm. Psychologist goes onto Twitter to castigate overweight people and to tell people to kill themselves. I feel like you stole that joke from me, Nestlig. Mastectomies feel like lobotomies to boobs like Peterson. But you have good taste.
everyone is aware of this. Surgeons are much more likely to be psychopathic than people in the typical profession. That's a well-documented phenomenon
Is
in the
it?
psychological literature. Now, it's not only surgeons, obviously. You see that in other professions as well. But if you happen to be sadistic and psychopathic, a profession that allows you to cut people up, and you think, well, there are no people like that. It's like, well, I think they just...
Hey, Jordan. The definition of psychopath is not someone who gets a jolly cutting people up. You're complaining about the decision of a governing body over your license as a psychologist. This is a strange move for you.
just arrested some nurse in the UK for killing a bunch of babies in her psychopathic and sadistic manner. And so if you don't think there are people like that, you're naive beyond belief, and you better bloody well pray that you never meet anyone like that, because they're looking for someone just as naive as you to have their way with.
There are countries now that have outlawed surgery for minors, transgender surgeries for minors. Like I believe Sweden has.
They didn't exactly
and states.
outlaw it. I got corrected on that claim by Community Notes on Twitter. Well, what happened was they've restricted surgery to minors to clinical trials, which is, it's a detail. They've backtracked. There's no doubt Denmark, France, Sweden, the UK, Holland, the Netherlands, which is particularly relevant because that's where this gender-affirming surgical idiocy first made itself manifest. The Europeans have woken up to the fact that, well, you know what?
See, I don't think you're ever going to see Jordan Peterson going on the warpath about young men getting mastectomies because they have excessive breast growth. Because that happens. That's a frequent occurrence. I would, with his obvious substance abuse, I would not be surprised if it's in Jordan Peterson's future at some point. Like this is a common result of hormonal imbalances in cis men. And why is it done? It solely as gender affirming care. You won't die if you have like tits as a guy. You'll be fine unless the fact of having tits as a guy is psychologically damaging. Somehow, by magic, I suppose.
Turns out that there's no evidence that sterilizing young people and cutting off their breasts makes them happier.
Yeah, there is.
Isn't that a shock?
There's tons of evidence,
Yeah.
actually. That's why they.
I think
that's
this
why
is
they
going
do
to
it.
this is an argument that has to be had right now, and there's going to be such pushback from people who have gone through these surgeries starting now. It's already happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had some more things to read from the decision.
Yeah.
Whether-
Well, there are a couple of other, I don't know if they're funny, but there are a couple of other parts just to clarify what's going on. Is that this decision that they've come to ordered Dr. Peterson, as a registered member of the college, to complete a specified continuing education or remedial program, a SCRP, regarding professionalism in public statements.
Okay, I'm bored of this. Let's find something else. Enough adventures in the realm of dementia. World's run by crazy people. Alright, here we go. Let's get Andrewism on here. I'm actually looking forward to this one. So this is, I guess he's Andrewism now, not saying Andrewism. This is Andrewism's How the Barter Myth Harms Us.
Back when I was in school, in my social studies class, I learned that prior to the
Here, let's look at the sources here quickly. We're looking at Let's dive right into the debate on the origins of money, the reality of pre-money exchange, the actual uses of barter through history, and how all of this has affected our imagination of the present and the future. Looks like he's relying primarily on Graeber, so debt the first 5,000 years. Okay. I like Andrewism. If I have one criticism for him, it's that a lot of his videos are very much one-book videos, which is just, he's read a book and he's just regurgitated a thesis, which is fine. I don't mind that. He cites them well, and they're generally very well done. But there's not a lot of synthetic work being done typically. But I expect he'll do more of that in the future once he has a lot more of these down.
Invention of money, people had to barter for everything they needed from anyone else. In a barter system, value is determined by negotiation and mutual agreement, not market price. So people negotiate with each other to trade goods and services they can offer with goods and services they desire. So, for example, let's say I have baskets upon baskets of mangoes, and I'm trying to get rid of them because I prefer pineapples. And let's say one of my neighbors, we'll call them Patsy, has a goat, and my other neighbor, Boyo, has a field of pineapples. Now, Boyo don't like pineapples, but he does want a goat for a goat race, and Patsy tired taking care of this goat, so she's ready to give away the goat in exchange for some mangoes. Easy solution, I give Patsy my mangoes, I get Patsy's goat, I give Patsy's goat to Boyo in exchange for his pineapples. That's the ideal barter system scenario. But it gets messy the moment you introduce more than one trade scenario into the equation. What if Boyo didn't want the goat? What if he wanted a cow? What if Patsy was allergic to mangoes? What if none of my neighbors had pineapples and my mangoes just rotted away because I couldn't trade them for anything I wanted? That tricky scenario is known as the double coincidence of wants problem, which is when two parties each have a good or service that the other party wants, but they are unable to trade because they each desire something different from what the other has to offer. It arises fairly frequently within barter systems because you can't always find someone who's willing to trade what you have for what you want. In my social studies textbook, the double coincidence of wants problem was used to explain why people shifted from the barter system to the monetary system, money being the solution as it serves as a standardized medium of exchange. But what if I told you that isn't exactly what happened? Let's dive right into the debate on the origins of money, the reality of pre-money exchange, the actual uses of barter through history, and how all of this has affected our imagination of the past, present, and future. In his highly influential 18th century work, An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, Scottish economist Adam Smith first proposed the idea that as soon as a division of labour appears in human society, such as some specialising in hunting while others specialised in crafting, people would naturally begin to barter with each other, leading to the double coincidence of wants problem that would give birth to money. Long prior to Adam Smith, Aristotle had also theorized in his book Politics in the 4th century BCE that barter preceded the invention of money. Karl Menschel, Stanley Jevons, and
5th century, not 4th century. Aristotle is not that old.
the 19th century
That's
economists
wrong.
all kept Smith's framework of barter preceding money.
Bad.
These days, every introduction to economics seems to speculate that barter was the foundation of simple, early economies. One trending title on the history of money charts its history from barter to banknotes to Bitcoin. Meanwhile, in the world of science, anthropologists were out in the field directly observing how economies without money actually worked. They noted a vast diversity in arrangements, from societies where people competed to give the best gifts to societies that commonly held stockpiles of goods. As British anthropologist Caroline Humphrey concluded, no example of a barter economy, pure and simple, has ever been described, let alone the emergence from it of money. All available ethnography suggests that there never has been such a thing. Of course, barter has existed historically and contemporarily, but it has never been the basis of a whole economy, and it was not the origin of money. Barter as a practice arises in three main circumstances: The first is in situations where people are used to using money but don't have it anymore, such as an economic crisis. In such cases, barter arises after the invention of money. The second occurs on rare occasions between strangers who will never see each other again, hardly the basis of a day-to-day economy. The third is where there are ongoing trade relations between strangers in moneyless economies, but no double coincidence of one's problem arises because they already know exactly what they want to acquire from the other party. If you're gonna cross a desert, a mountain, and an ocean, risking death
hang
to
on.
trade your goods, you're doing so because you know.
No, you're right. Shoot. I'm brain dead. No, Aristotle was 4th century. Fuck. I'm thinking of like in the century of Solon.
They have what you want, and you have what they want. Even when money
You win this round, Andrew.
in markets did exist, they would still trade based on conventional rates of exchange. Or if money was used, it was used for specific commodities. Being a merchant in ancient times was not easy, so you make it a bit easier by minimizing uncertainty. While it's possible for such a system to generate a means of accounting, there's no reason to assume that it would produce a concrete medium of exchange regularly used in everyday transactions within a society. Such a system would likely only be used by the tiny proportion of the population engaged in long-distance trade. As the late British anthropologist David Graeber argues, among the many flaws of this economic theory and the origin of money via barter is the assumption of spot transactions as the basis of early economies. If people don't make the trade right away, there's no deal. But why would we limit ourselves to spot transactions in a day-to-day economy? If you don't have what I want right now, I could still give you what you want and you'll eventually return the favor. We are neighbors after all. The vast majority of all economic relations in human history have existed between people that lived near each other and knew each other personally, not long-distance traders. An institution as impersonal as money wouldn't cut it in such contexts.
Hey Johnny, I've been looking all over for someone to trade my spears with. I'm really hungry and I need some bread. Do you want to trade my spears for some bread?
Nah bro, I only have 2 apples and I don't want any spears.
What about my 2-disc Blu-ray special edition of The Incredibles with commentary from director Brad Bird? Maybe then I could trade your apples for some bread.
Nah, no thanks. Blu-ray is a social construct. And besides, I didn't even like the sequel. But what's going on? You look really worn out.
Bruh, I've been stressing the whole day trying to barter. First I tried Old Man Jeffrey, then I tried Shanice the Shaman. I even hit up Maurice from across the river. Just no one.
Man, I see what you mean. You seem down fatter than a lone antelope on an empty plain. This whole system feels rigged for real.
Facts, bro. Like, I wish we didn't have to do things this way. I mean, we're all living together in a community. Why does everything have to be this rational, calculating exchange to seek material advantage? Why can't we all just share stuff? Why wouldn't we want to just share stuff?
Yeah, but, I mean, this is just the way it is. The way it's always been. Not like it's ever going to change. This is the only possible system.
I don't know about you, but I hate being the projection of dead economists used to justify the universal and masturbatory nature of capitalism.
Same here. Good luck getting your bread, though.
It's not even capitalism, though. Like, you find this going back to Hobbes, where there's a there's a post hoc justification of the state by reference to this supposed literal economic exchange of rights and some mythical point in the past, because there's this assumption that because human beings in present day, in Hobbes' time, are disembedded from each other in such a way as, in a state of nature, removed from society, you would have a Lord of the Flies scenario where they would just kill each other. That therefore you require like a specific discrete set of exchanges and agreements in order for them to be able to coexist at all. Which is kind of preposterous as soon as you, well, I mean, certainly like in a post-evolutionary mode where you recognize that humans and pre-humans have existed in family groups quite effectively for a very, very long time, much longer than civilization has been around. It's not even it's not even capitalist economics that leads to this kind of thinking. This goes back quite a bit further.
Thanks.
What anthropologists have observed is a system of non-enumerated credits and debts. That means that people owe and are owed to, but such obligations are not quantified or measured
God, I can't believe I got the century wrong. That's so
And while
embarrassing.
valuables are given, there is no explicit agreement for immediate or future returns. Such gift economies rely on mutual and alternating debts as the foundation upon which social relationships are maintained. There is still a sense of some gifts being better than others, of course. Canoes take a lot of time and effort to make, so you're going to get called cheap if the gift you return is just a chicken. But nobody's going to assign a numerical value to exactly how cheap you are for that social faux pas. Across the world, we can find many examples of gift economy principles practiced in day-to-day life. In the Trobriand Islands of Papua New Guinea, the people exchange shell necklaces and armbands, known as sulava, in a vast and complex network of relationships that spans the islands. The sulava are considered valuable not for their inherent worth, but for the relationships they help to create and maintain. In traditional Chinese society, gift giving was viewed as a way to build and maintain guanxi, the social connections and networks that facilitate cooperation and trust among people. Among the indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest coast of North America, the practice of potlatch served to create and reinforce social relationships through gift giving at large ceremonial feasts, to mark important life events such as weddings, funerals, and the passing of leadership roles, and to demonstrate one's wealth, generosity, and social status. Non-monetary societies typically separate the things and services they share into various spheres of exchange. There might be a sphere of general consumption, a sphere for land, a sphere for marriages, and a sphere for diplomacy. For example, some rural Mongolian gold miners wouldn't use the gold they mine to purchase cattle or pay dowries, because taking material from one sphere and putting it into another is considered a pollution. Consolidating everything into one sphere of exchange through money is not the only way of organizing economic life. And anyway, there's no reason why there should be just one story for the origin of money. If money is just a mathematical system that allows for the comparison of proportional values, which may or may not take the form of a circulating medium of exchange, then that could develop independently all over the place. Current evidence demonstrates that widespread pricing systems emerge in the Fertile Crescent as a side effect of non-state bureaucracies. In ancient Mesopotamia, temple administrations employed thousands of people, which all needed to be fed and provisioned. This led to a system of fixed equivalences.
This is also why temples were not nice places in ancient Mesopotamia. They were very stressful places that took your produce from you.
Between silver and grain, as silver was already being used to make images of gods, and grain was stockpiled within the temples as well. A single silver shekel was made equivalent to the rationed number of bushels of barley that could provide 2 meals a day for a temple worker.
Is your voice feeling much better, by the way? Apologies if you've already been asked this. It's iffy. It sounds better. Like, it's not as gravelly as it was yesterday, but I'm still, like, super fatigued. And I can't, like, project very much without, like, going into a coughing fit, so.
Over the course of a month.
Thanks for asking.
This fixed equivalence was then extended to compare the values of other everyday items. Even then, however, this system of pricing only created a means of keeping track of credit-based transactions, not the actual use of silver currency. But temple bureaucracies aren't that common. Another origin of money can be found in legal bureaucracies. People who have been wronged tend to want exact compensation. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You kill my brother and you have to pay my family X amount of cows, or that amount of cows equivalent in silver. Societies that wanted to prevent minor grievances from turning into major wars would develop elaborate systems of penalties for various forms of injuries or slights, which required a means of precise compensation that wouldn't otherwise be necessary for ordinary informal credit arrangements or gift economies. Hence, money. The myth of the barter economy has had disastrous results on a collective understanding of economic history. In societies without money throughout history, gift-giving and credit systems form the basis of social ties and economic relations of mutual obligation, not atomized, individualistic, and self-centered spot transactions between strangers. In such societies, where exchanges of goods and services occurred, people were far more interested in who they loved, hated, wanted to embarrass, wanted to bail out of troubles, and wanted to avoid feuds with, than just trying to get the best deal. The idea embedded within the barter myth is that we can only operate within a sort of quid pro quo mentality a la Homo economicus, and that money is simply an improved form of our existing baseline prehistoric relations. From there, it may be easy to assign value not just to objects, but to people. The institution of money has enabled institutions like chattel slavery and imperialism, and led to the development of capitalism, which forces the majority of people to sell their time and labor for a wage in order to meet their basic subsistence needs. The barter myth is a projection of a mindset created under specific conditions to all of human nature, creating a narrow vision of our range of economic and social possibilities. Our imaginations need not be so limited by these common-sense economic mythologies. For much of human history, we have shared our time, energy, and resources within our communities for the benefit of all. Some societies forge cross-community goodwill through the sharing of gifts. I've already spoken about how we can reinvigorate such relations in modern times through the development of library economies, but I intend to explore the concept even further in the future. For now, all power to all the people. Peace.
That was decent. I have to read that still. Graeber's generally pretty good. Yeah. That was alright. I like that skit in the middle. I don't really have a whole lot to say to that one. It was good though. Here we go. Such an Adam. Socialist admits Marxism is being taught in school. All caps. Because we're very concerned. We are deeply concerned. Oh, second thought. Okay. Of course.
Contradicting the argument. He's not actually contradicting the argument. All he's saying is that it's not been effective. He's not contradicting their arguments that the Frankfurt School had this philosophy that was then passed down to critical studies, which is then now infiltrated schools. He's not contradicting that at all. He's just saying, well, it hasn't really taken off yet.
Yeah, pretty much.
This Koch, Musk, and all their buddies aren't part of the elite at all, because they say socialism is bad. But a few college students staging a sit-in and just asking, for a higher minimum wage and less discrimination are the shadowy cabal threatening the very foundations of America. Not only is this idea of a Marxist takeover not based in any kind of reality,
oh my God.
with this narrative, Lind and these other pundits are trying to make it seem like all these different movements for equality and social change from the 60s onwards are illegitimate. He makes social progress look deeply objectionable, and this story about cultural Marxism taking over because of a few books makes it seem like the change happened through a top-down conspiracy of a few privileged woke people, instead of what really happened.
Oh no.
Okay, so before we get into what really happened. Okay. Well, because first of all, he frames... He's like, oh, there's just these poor college students who just want a higher minimum wage, right? It's like ignoring all the insanity that we saw with Evergreen and Yale and all these colleges that were like hyper woke and instituting all these hyper.
We actually went through all of the data on the Evergreen colleges. There was literally nothing going on. It was nothing. It was literally nothing. What it was actually the staff. was selling themselves as being a hyper-progressive Evergreen was marketing itself as being a hyper-progressive institution, but they had an incredibly heavy hand when it came to any sort of dispute between a black and a white student. And so one of the things that instigated the protests that shoot, lost his name. Hang on. Everyone stay calm. Evergreen College. Brett Weinstein. I almost said Brett Epstein. That Brett Epstein inserted himself into was because a black student and a white student had a verbal altercation in the lunchroom. The white student whined to the staff afterwards, and they had the student arrested in the middle of the night. So that's why those protests took place. It had nothing to do with wokeness. It was actually kind of the opposite. It was in response to the university having a hair trigger when it came to calling the police and terrorizing students, based largely on them reacting negatively to racial goading, as a matter of fact. So what we saw at Evergreen, we actually saw what happened at Evergreen. I have a backlog of coverage of that. These idiots have no idea what they're talking about.
Woke rules and regulations and cancellations and all these things, but like no, that all just gets.
By the way, thanks Destiny for continuing to spread this lie. Thanks, it's brilliant. Yeah, you're doing the hard work that the left can't do. Whoring yourself out for centrist approval while spreading actually the most pernicious myths the right wing has.
Ignored, and we just pretend like none of that happened. We close our eyes and we say, "Oh, they just want a higher minimum wage. That's all they want. That's all they want.
Just economic justice. That's all they want.
Oh, okay.
Ignore them hunting down professors and trying to kill them.
What?
And now, even though so far he
Hang on,
hasn't
what?
made any fact
Who has hunted down a professor and tried to kill them?
refutation of the direct line from Frankfurt School to the critical studies implemented in America, right? But he's claiming that he's about to show us why that's wrong. Okay, so we're gonna see what his sterling evidence is for this.
Sterling.
My
like
brother in Christ, you can hardly
Millions of people
read.
protested, went on strike, and organized from the bottom up, marching and fighting against the prevailing classism, racism, sexism, and homophobia that brutalized them and their peers, only to achieve partial success, gaining legal equality without material equality.
Why is there a graphic of Short Fat Talk on the screen? Because the actual site of Short Fat Talk who will send people into mental distress.
Alongside a little more positive representation in popular media, to imply that those who are the victims of capitalism, those who are the most oppressed, most marginalized, are actually behind the curtain controlling everything is just wrong, and contrary to every piece of evidence we have about who has wealth and power in this country.
Ooh.
Anyway, after making the claim that
Okay, wait. Okay, so his argument is these guys are wrong about these theories impacting today's philosophical theories. Okay, he said those guys are wrong about the Frankfurt School basically, creating wokeness and cultural Marxism because in America's past, black people were oppressed.
Right.
And those black people, they said, hey, give us some rights.
Well, he'll also say that they're still oppressed, so it has to be wrong. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, he
he'll
alluded
say
to
something like
wealth
that, yeah.
disparities.
So
Yeah.
Right, but so he's not actually contradicting the argument. All he's saying is that it's not been effective. He's not contradicting their arguments that the Frankfurt School had this philosophy that was then passed down to critical studies, which is then now infiltrated schools. He's not contradicting that at all. He's just saying, well, it hasn't really taken off yet.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and that's what I said in my video too, was that You can
Right.
argue about its efficacy because it does seem to be the case that a lot of people who get indoctrinated in this stuff, once they go out and work
Jesus Christ, these people are so stupid. It's actually just a willful self-abortion. I don't know if I can sit through this. I'm probably going to call it here tonight. My throat's going, and there's just nothing to respond to this with. We're at the point of just making shit up. So, all right, we'll be back soon. We have more structured stuff in the near future. This is just, once again, sort of wading back into streaming as I'm recovering from COVID. So, yeah, let's send you somewhere. I was almost not even going to stream tonight just because I'm so tired. But I figured I should give it a try. Let's see, who can we send you to? I still can't send you to Vosh because of any being a nutball. What is this? That's not tonight, so I can't send you there. How about... not sending you to Tom because they sent you to Adam and Sitch last time. Let's see. Who's streaming right now? God, YouTube is just so dead at the moment. It's actually unreal. Oh, I wonder if I can send you to Sinclair Lore. Maybe they'll let me do it. Let's see. They're playing Fires of Rubicon now. No, I need redirect privileges, damn it. So dumb. Well, I guess I'm not seeing you anywhere. Take care, everyone.